Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Fennell. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're going to talk about what are some things that you should know as a nursing student to plan and implement your journey into CRNA school. So a lot of you are exploring this career path, which is awesome. I high five to you. The earlier, the better. So the sooner you decide to pursue CRNA, honestly, the better it's going to be because you're going to learn sooner and learn kind of essentially how to avoid some common barriers that students often face if they choose to do this career path later on. But one thing I will start off by saying in this episode is that I see a lot of nursing students question their ability early on. I myself am included in this category that I thought about CRNA early on in nursing school, but I kind of thought, no, that's not possible, Jenny. You're not smart enough. That's what I thought. And it's so unfortunate that I did that to myself. It wasn't until later in my nursing school career, probably more towards my senior year, end of junior year, that I finally decided that I had to give it a shot because that desire and passion never went away. And I finally was like, well, what's it going to hurt to try, And so if I'm speaking to you, I encourage you, if you're listening to this, I am speaking to you. I know you're here because you are interested in CRNA, you want to learn more about the career path, but maybe you're doubting yourself. So let's just start this episode off with some positive reinforcement and telling yourself to give yourself that chance. Okay. So embrace the fears that you may be thinking or feeling around becoming a CRNA. That's my first piece of advice as a nursing student, is to take kind of ownership for the fact that you have control of the decisions you make now that will impact you later on. So another common mistake I see nursing students make is C's to get degrees. Oh, you guys, that language kills my soul. Like every time I hear someone, especially if I hear mentors say this to students, and it is so unfortunate. So if you have heard this, I don't care who you've heard it from, just act like you've never heard it, block it out of your brain. It's just terrible advice. And yes, terrible. It's terrible advice. I don't know whoever came up with that saying, but it's awful. And I wish it wasn't circulating so frequently in our social media and just in general, because talk about killing your future by accepting the fact that C's get degrees. Now, I'm not saying C's are the end of everything. I'm not saying if you get C's that you're not capable of becoming a CRNA. So please do not misinterpret this. And people, again, some courses are harder than others. And okay, you may have gotten a C. I myself had a C in organic chemistry. It kicked my butt my freshman year. And I was like super upset about it, but there's nothing I could do, right? I tried and I just couldn't get anything better than a C plus. Okay, cool. Move on. However, that was at a period of my life. That was my freshman year in nursing school. And I will be quite honest with you guys that when I entered college, I did not know how to study efficiently for myself. I was able to get by with B's and C's in high school by kind of doing what I thought was effective studying. So the first thing you should be doing, if I'm speaking to you about around this topic, is assess your study habits. This should be happening while you're still in nursing school. Even as you're transitioning from high school to nursing school, you need to be understanding your study habits, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And unfortunately, at least in my experience, high school didn't challenge me in that way to figure it out. I kind of just accepted that I was a B student and I was okay with that. I would occasionally get an A in home ec, if I was a calculus course, which I actually ended up dropping out to take home ec my senior year in high school. But like the harder classes, I tended to get a B, and the easier classes, I got an A. And so my overall GPA worked out to right around a 3.4 because the easy A's offset the harder classes, which were B's and sometimes C's. So that being said, I never really challenged myself in high school to understand where my problems were as far as my study habits and my routine. I just accepted that I was reading books and practicing the study guides the teachers would give, and the B is what I could get. Okay. That was my first mistake. So when I entered college, the rigors of college were tenfold. And so I quickly realized, whoa, what worked for me back then is not working for me now. And it took me that first year to kind of get my butt kicked a little bit to kind of realize I need to figure out a new strategy because this is not working. And I know I've shared with you guys this in the past too, but I also found out kind of in the middle of my high school career that I had like a mild form of dyslexia. And I will say my dyslexia is mild. However, it has hindered me in my ability to comprehend reading. And just in general, like my learning strategies sometimes have to be pretty unique because I am a unique learner. We all are unique learners. And just because you have something like this does not mean you are not capable. Please, like, just believe in yourself. You can do it. You have the same brain as everyone else. You have the ability to learn. It's a powerful tool. You just have to learn how to use it efficiently for yourself. So explore, challenge yourself to explore different study techniques. Figure out whether you like using highlighters. Okay, not just highlighters. Do you like different colors of highlighters? Explore study techniques. When I was trying to figure this out, you guys, when I didn't get into nursing school my freshman year, and I barely had a 3.1 at the end of my freshman year, and I got rejected from the College of Nursing, I had a couple options. I could go home, live with my parents, which that was terrifying because my dad is very strict, and I was like, there's no way I could live at home. There's just no way. I love you, Dad, but there's no way I could live at home in college. And so, and also all the friends I had made over that year, it was kind of scary for me at that time. I was like, I really wanted to stay at Ohio State. That was like my dream school. And so I thought my other option is to figure out how to get straight A's, which I've never done before. That's a little intimidating, right? It's something I've never done before. Didn't know if I could do, but I figured just like CRNA school, I kind of owned the fact that I had to give myself that shot. I had to just take that. I had to try, right? So I did, and I tried, and I Googled every study technique that I could find on Google, and I tried them all, including listening to my notes while I slept. I recorded myself speaking my notes, or I took my little recorder to my classes, sat up front and recorded the teacher speaking. Because back then they didn't have these nice, like, pre-recorded PowerPoints like I'm sure they do these days. But I would put it on replay, and as I fell asleep, I would listen to it. And I thought maybe that would help me study. And I don't think I kept that study technique very long, but I tried it, meaning I was open to trying new things. And so I encourage you to just explore and see what works, what doesn't work. Through that challenge of trying to figure out what works, I actually discovered that handwriting my notes was the best way for me to memorize, not just by reading. I discovered that I like highlighters, but I like color highlighters, not just yellow. I had to mix it up, meaning my books look like rainbow sheets. But when I would recall something for a test, I could remember what I highlighted in blue, pink, green, orange, that kind of thing. So I discovered that through trying it. I also discovered that, yes, if I read my notes on the way to a test, I would literally replay it in my ear as I walked to a test. I would do well on a test. However, for the midterm and final, I would not do so well. So essentially cramming, right? Cramming didn't help my long-term memory. So I tended to do better on initial tests than I did on finals. And so I had to really shift my technique as in, how can I make memories last longer? So what I discovered is I had to do something called interleaving, which is where you connect different aspects of your learning to other topics. And it kind of creates a foundation and a base. And if you want more study techniques, and I don't want to go too far into this episode, I do have an episode on study techniques. So I encourage you to search down through, I have a couple of them now actually, because that was a really popular episode. So search through my episodes for the study technique episodes and learn more about it there. But yeah, challenge yourself to, how do you learn well? Because you need better than C's. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. If you get all C's in nursing school, it's going to be extremely hard to ever get any CRNA school to open their eyeballs to even interviewing you. And when you're applying to CRNA school, you need to get an interview. That's how you get in. You can't just apply. You have to interview. To get an interview, you have to be competitive. Competitive students don't have C's. And so don't adapt the C's get degrees. Start off with your nursing career gung-ho. Do as best you can. Try to get A's as much as possible. It's okay if you get a C here and there. It's okay, but assess why that happened. Assess what you could do differently so that doesn't happen again. Okay, because you could probably recover from a C, but if you got 2, 3, 4, 5 C's, especially if it's in your core science courses, it's going to be extremely hard to ever recover from that. So please, as a nursing student, going into nursing school, starting nursing school, take your first year as seriously as possible. Know that they really, really highly evaluate your core science courses, which are your microbiology, biology, any kind of biology, chemistries, any chemistries, math, any math, algebra, statistics, any of that, and the anatomy, pathophysiology. Whether your anatomy is separate or combined, they look at those science courses because the CRNA curriculum is extremely heavy in the sciences. So to them, that's a very good indicator of what type of student you're going to be in CRNA school. And you may be thinking, well, Jenny, my nursing degree was like 20 years ago. Well, also, just so you know, most schools have a 5 or 10 year maximum in your science courses. I mean, if it's been more than 5 years, more than 10 years, most schools are 10 years, but a few schools are 5 years, which is, which essentially means you need to graduate and plan for CRNA right away. But if it's been 10 years, a lot of schools make you retake those core sciences. But again, this is why you need to start doing your research early on, which leads into my next piece of advice. If you're in nursing school and you're considering CRNA, do your research early. Yes, it's not too early to start researching schools, attending open houses. Attend the open houses. They're free. Go to just any schools you may be applying to and look to see when their next open house date is and go. A lot of times these days they're virtual. I know back when I was researching schools, there was no virtual events. And so I had to actually go to it. And the only closest CRNA school was 2.5 hours away from me. So I never went, and I should have, but to drive nowadays, the fact that so many things are virtual, it's so easy, you guys, to just make the time to attend these sessions. I know like Case Western does sessions almost every single month. I mean, these schools are trying to give you this information. It's up to you to seek out the information and make the initiative and make the time to go. So go to the open houses. Okay, number one, assess your study habits. C's do not get degrees. And secondly, go to these open houses, start researching your schools. That's number two. Number three is to shadow. Now, I know this is hard because of everything going on. I am praying, just like everyone, that this is going to come to an end sometime soon. But the reality, this is the world we live in. Shadowing has become extremely difficult. And it was already difficult, unfortunately, to begin with. And this has just sometimes made it almost near impossible for students to really get this experience. And that is sad. It's heartbreaking. And I don't have any magical solutions, unfortunately. However, these are some things you can do to help you gain the shadowing experience you need to solidify this career. Do not wait till you are applying to CRNA school to gain shadow experience. The reason is because, well, it just looks like you're just checking a box, meaning, okay, I have to shadow to apply. I'm going to go ahead and shadow. Meaning you're already all in to apply to CRNA school without ever seeing what we do in real life. And that can be seen as kind of a problem for schools, meaning they want to make sure that before you invest the time and money to attend their program, that you are very serious about pursuing CRNA, such that you don't want to get accepted, start clinicals and realize, oh, I had no idea this is what CRNAs do. I don't want to do this. And yes, that does happen. And so they assess whether you shadow. And if you've shadowed more than once and over a period of 2 or 3 or 4 years, it's going to show determination and persistence and desire and drive to really pursue this. They're going to know that you truly want this, versus if you just were to shadowed a month prior to your application deadline, it's going to say, okay, you're already actively applying prior to ever seeing what this profession was like. Now, if that's you, I'm not poo-pooing that. You need to do it. And I'm not saying schools are going to see that and automatically write you off as not a good candidate. So please don't interpret it that way. I'm just saying from their perspective, if they see persistence over a period of time, they're going to know that you're a more serious candidate. They will still interview you if you have everything else in a shadow experience, even if it was like the week before your deadline application was due. But that being said, if they had to say, okay, well, this person clearly has been more invested in this career path for much longer because they have several shadowing experiences that date 4 or 5 years ago. The other problem that I see a lot of students get into is they don't document their shadow experience early on. And so even though they may have done it, these schools don't know that. And the only documentation they have is the one that they need prior to applying. And that's unfortunate. If that's speaking to you, I have a free shadow documentation form. I want you to grab, print it out, keep it with you. So when you do get your first shadowing experience, you can remember to bring it with you on the day, document it, submit it for your application to CRNA school, even if it's 10 years down the road. submit it as extra documentation. This I think will just help you, and it will show your persistence. So again, in the show notes, I'm going to post the free shadow documentation form. And it also will give you kind of insights as to what are some things you should be looking to gain from this experience? What are some things you should be trying to observe during your shadow experience? And what I also will say about shadowing is the more times you do it, the more you're going to walk away from it. I encourage you every time you shadow to reflect on that, write your big takeaways. And then every time you do it, document this experience and compare, because you will have grown so much from your first shadowing experience. Also, you guys, if you're getting to the wire and you can't get a shadow experience, or maybe you're just curious to like get an experience, but you can't get one right now, we also have a virtual general anesthesia simulation. Hugely valuable. We record it in an actual anesthesia simulation lab. Okay. So it's a real deal. I have 7 CRNA actors who act out general anesthesia. We also have about an hour and a half of actual education that goes with it, where a program faculty, Richard Wilson, my friend and an expert contributor of CRNA School Prep Academy, will walk you through the induction sequence and, emergence and the pre-op and all of that. He walks you through on an education standpoint, so you actually walk away with understanding, kind of similar to what we would expect you to get in a real shadowing experience, when you can actually ask a CRNA questions about, hey, why did you pick ketamine versus fentanyl? So that's why we did this simulation experience, because we have seen your pleas of like, hey, I need help. I need shadowing. I can't get it. What do I do? So we created the virtual simulation. And if this is speaking to you and you're getting ready to apply to your program, reach out to them and ask them if this virtual experience will be accepted as a real shadowing experience. From my time speaking with program faculty, many of them are accepting this type of an experience in replace of a real shadow experience, because they understand that it's extremely hard to get one right now. It doesn't mean that you should stop trying or not attempt to get one. So please do not interpret it that way. But if you're down to the wire, or maybe you're just want to get that first experience because you want to understand our profession a little bit more, that's why we created the shadow experience. And also with this virtual experience, not only is it great for nursing students who are exploring this career path, who again can't get in for a shadow experience, it's really great prior to your interviews, because they may say, well, tell me what a CRNA does. Well, guess what? Then you have lifetime access to this course. So you can log in right before your interview, watch it again. When they say, tell me what a CRNA does, it'll be a refresher in your mind, fresh, so you can explain what a CRNA does from start to finish, which will be an amazing resource for your interviews. It's also going to be a great resource for you as your time as an SRNA before you start clinicals. And the fact that you have lifetime access, again, you can hit this resource several times in your journey. So down below, at the very minimum, grab your free shadow documentation form. So when you get your in-person experience, you can document it. And if you're struggling on that area, do our simulation and get lifetime access to this course. It'll be worth it, I promise. So that's my third piece of advice, is to try to shadow. Okay, so number 4 is, and I think I mentioned research schools, that kind of counts as a step as well. But commit to learning. And what I mean by this is, don't get me wrong, I know you're already learning, but commit to learning about CRNA, commit to learning about ICU, because to become a CRNA, you have to be well adept in ICU knowledge, right? I guess the way I'm trying to phrase this is ask why. If you get an order from a doctor, if you get any kind of protocol, understand why you're doing it and how it affects the pathophysiology of that disease process. If you take this initiative to always be inquisitive and to ask, why are we doing this? How does potassium come out of the cell when you give insulin, or go back into the cell when you give insulin? If you understand that physiology process and why you do an insulin drip for someone who has hyperkalemia, for example, it'll fuel your learning aptitude and desire to pursue CRNA, because you're going to have more confidence when you understand why you're doing certain things. And it will also lead into confidence to pursue CRNA, because a lot of CRNA interviews are really heavy pathophysiology, pharmacology, even the ones that are not, they're going to kind of quiz your emotional intelligence as far as, tell me about a difficult time with a patient you had in the ICU and how did you handle it? Or tell me about how do you handle death and suffering, or I mean, they can ask you all kinds of questions that could relate to your time in the ICU and how you handle being in that stressful environment, because they want to make sure that you have a good self-awareness, and also kind of how have you adapted to the ICU world and how much have you gained from that experience. So committing to that learning, committing to self-awareness, and really exploring your own personality, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses. And then if you know your weaknesses, how are you working on them? I'm not saying they're ever going to go away. I'm first to admit I have tons of weaknesses, and they will probably always be my weaknesses, but I'm aware of my weaknesses. And when I make a mistake or when I do something, I recognize it pretty quickly now. And I'm like, ooh, and then I do work on trying to get better at that. Yes, it's easier said than done, 100%. Okay. I'm right there with you on that. But it still means you have to have recognition, because they could ask you, if your boss had to criticize you or say anything that was negative about you, what would it be? And sometimes it's hard for people to even think about or even on the spot say, but if you knew full well what your weaknesses are, you could probably come up with something to tell them, and also how you're working towards bettering that problem, right? So that's my piece of advice around that aspect. So get to know yourself. Okay, here we're going to kind of wrap this up, and last two big takeaways. Okay, this one is so important, probably one of the most important things, because holy cow, if I had a nickel for every time I had a student tell me they had someone unencourage them or put them down for pursuing CRNA, I'd be rich. But don't listen to the naysayers. There are so many people who may have attempted CRNA or know someone who attempted CRNA and maybe they weren't successful. And then they're quick to just spew out that negativity onto you. Well, did you know that so-and-so, they didn't even get an interview and they had 5 years of ICU experience and they had a 4.0 and good luck. Okay, well, that's just negativity that you don't need. And that's not the whole story. They don't know the whole story. There is always a much deeper story to every rejection, okay? Every non-interview, there's a reason. Every non-acceptance to CRNA school, there's a reason. And yes, sometimes the reason is because it was the competitive application cycle, which is a super annoying thing to hear when you just want to know why and how to become more competitive. But again, that's why CRNA School Prep Academy is here to help you figure that out. Not all schools can give every student tailored individual advice. And sometimes their answer is just that, yes, you are a good candidate, but there's also a lot of other good candidates. So it's just competitive. I don't have to tell you, try again. But that's not helpful advice as far as how to move forward. And so when students get that kind of feedback, they just automatically assume they're not good enough. And that's not true. It's not true. You are good enough. Okay, you are good enough. First of all, if you're getting interviews, you are more than qualified for CRNA school. Secondly, if you're not getting interviews, you need to be reflecting on why that is and take actionable ways to improve upon that. And if it's because your GPA, that is going to be a battle that's going to be very hard. It's not impossible. Plenty of students do it, but it's going to take persistence and it's going to take being okay with rejection. And if you haven't listened to my other episodes, I talk with Mike about his 12 rejections. He's a current CRNA, current SRNA. He's a current student. He dealt with 12 rejections and kept going. Yes, some people deal with that many rejections prior to CRNA school. And here's the big kicker. He didn't have a low GPA. So if that says anything to you, it's competitive, you guys. There's nothing to be negatively reflected upon you and your aptitude or your ability to become a CRNA. Sometimes it really is just competitive. And in his experience, in my humble opinion, it probably was the fact that he needed to really hone in on his interview, critiquing his own interview experience. And sometimes that's really what it comes down to, is practicing your interview skills, so anyhow, I just get off this soapbox, I know, but don't listen to the naysayers. And especially even if you've experienced rejection, keep going, find out why. And if you can't find out why, seek out resources that can help you figure that out. And again, that's why CRNA School Prep Academy is here. We do transcript audits. We have faculty members who do transcript reviews for you so you can get tailored advice. Yes, they can't tell you the exact course number and what college to take it in, but they can say, okay, if I was your CRNA program and I saw this on your transcript, this would be a concern. And this is where you need to work on improving. So again, we offer that inside CRNA School Prep Academy. Utilize the resources that are out there. There are a lot of resources out there. Look for ways to get involved and network. And again, shadowing a CRNA is a great way to do that. Okay, so the very last thing that I want to point out that I think a lot of people kind of get misguided from, or kind of maybe get off their own path, essentially, is because you play the comparison game. You look at how someone else got in after barely a year of ICU experience, and you didn't get in after 2 years of ICU experience. And you say, well, what the heck? What the heck? I have a better GPA than them. I have more experience than them. Why do they get in, not me? Like, what the heck? Or maybe you see someone, I'm just saying, you're comparing yourself to others and you're trying to make your timeline their timeline. That's a big no-no. You are unique. You are your own person, which means you will take your own way to get there. And it doesn't mean the fact that you faced 1, 2, 3, or 5, or 6, or 12 rejections that you're any less deserving of becoming a CRNA. It doesn't mean that, your coworker who had barely 6 months who got in means that like she just must have been gifted and you're not. None of that means anything. Okay. You have to own your own journey, and you have to own your own rejections. Okay. Because you are who you are. You're not Sally May, or I don't know where I got that name, but you're Jenny Fennell. Okay. You're Mike. You're your own person. And so just because they got in with less doesn't mean that you're not enough. All right. And yeah, sometimes things seem unfair, but and I know that that's just the way the world works, right? Things are not fair. They don't have to be fair. And it doesn't mean that you should put less effort into trying, right? Because the only way you guys are going to get success is to keep trying. All right. No one who is successful doesn't face failures at some point in their life. The people who are really successful are the ones who use their failures as learning steps or stepping stones and keep trying. Now, where this kind of ties back in, where I'm going to kind of leave this for you to think about, is to get through those really unfortunate, hard failures or mistakes. I call them mistakes. You have to know why. You have to know why you want this. You have to feel it. And I mean, physically feel it. It has to, like, when I start talking about this, you guys, I have arm hair, like actually a lot of arm hair. I'm not gifted. I have hairy arms. Feel goosebumps. Okay. Feel your hair stand up on your arms if you have arm hair like me, or just feel the tingles inside your body. I want you to feel why you want CRNA school, because that feeling, that excitement, that passion, that pins and needles tinglies from feeling you get in your toes and your fingertips when you think about why, that is going to push you through the rejections. That's going to push you through the defeat. That's going to push you through the hard times where it's like, man, the world's against me. What the heck? Why do I? And sometimes and I hate to say it, but sometimes you just beat yourself up. And when you go back to your why, you're going to recover from that. And yes, it might not be instant, but if you go back to your why, you're going to say, okay, I got this. I can do this. I want this. I want this. I want this. I'm going to do it. And that's what you have to fall back on. So I hope you guys take that advice from me, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, if you're early on in nursing school, please join our Facebook community. It's called ICU Dreaming About Anesthesia. It is a great, amazing community full of free resources for you to utilize. And of course, CRNA School Prep Academy is also here for you. We now offer a community aspect to our mentoring program, to where if you're not ready for the full-fledged membership, you can come in our paid private community. I go live every week. Woohoo, you get Jenny Fennell. I go live every single week to answer your questions. We also have 4 SRNAs who monitor the forum and social wall and are there to answer your questions, as well as program faculty Richard Wilson, who is our expert contributor. So if that's more desirable to you, come into our community. It's just $12.99 a month, and then you'll have access to me every week to answer your questions. And of course, CRNA School Prep Academy, part of CRNA School Prep Academy, and maybe I don't make this clear enough, it has tons of planning tools. And so even if you're a nursing student, I highly encourage you to utilize the Academy in the planning area. We have a lot of courses in there that allow you how to pick your school. And also as far as understanding your why and your plan, and how to make your plan, how to evaluate your GPA, your ICU experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, if you're looking for more tailored courses, come into CRNA School Prep Academy today to start utilizing our resources. All right. Thank you guys so much. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. See you next week.